Hello, everyone. Welcome to AI Everywhere Leaders podcast, where we explore real-world applications of artificial intelligence and their impact on business leadership. I'm your host, Adriana, and today we're diving into a critical topic that keeps many leaders awake at night: cybersecurity threats when employees use AI tools. With us today is Joseph Carson, a distinguished chief security officer and champion of digital trust and resilience, who has spent years, not to say decades, helping organizations navigate the complex intersection of emerging technology and cybersecurity. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Absolutely. Many thanks. And it's a pleasure to be here. And just going to give the audience a little bit about, absolutely. And many thanks for the kind introduction. Hopefully my experience and knowledge with AI over the many years will help provide a much more kind of clear understanding of the current, both benefits and risks. So for the audience, my name is Joseph Carson, and I'm been in this industry for a long time. I'm the chief evangelist at a company called Segura. And I'm also the host of a podcast as well called Security by Default. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited about today's conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joe. For anyone interested in listening to Joe's podcast, it's super interesting. I'm following it as well on Spotify, so I will add the link here so you can follow him as well. Joe, I invited you here today because I really wanted us to do a bit of a deep dive, especially for B2B marketing professionals and AI tools. I've seen there's a bit like the Wild West out there right now. There are so many tools, and, without saying anything bad to the marketing teams, but I discovered firsthand that the tools don't necessarily always do what the marketing words are saying to do. So I really wanted to have a bit of a conversation with you around that, and from your experience, what business professionals, marketing and non-marketing business professionals, should be aware when they are just installing some random tools on their devices or even work laptops.
Absolutely. One of the major things that we have to look at, the growth and acceleration of artificial intelligence in general. It's been massive and it's been huge. So when you think about AI in general, sometimes everyone has a label. Not all AI is equal. It's not the same. That's the important part, is that there's a massive broad spectrum of different capabilities. And some are just simple integrations into existing GPT models without actually providing any really intelligence themselves. So there's a very broad spectrum out there of AI capabilities. I always try to take an look at what it's actually really doing. Is it actually doing something of just simple automation, which many are, or it's just automation in the background? But do they come with large language models? Do they come with machine learning capabilities? Do they come with natural language processing and natural language understanding? So it's really important to look behind the AI label and really to understand about what actually is it doing, and is there real intelligence behind the scenes. There is a lot out there that's actually doing all of those things, which is great. Now, when it gets into what I find is, for many organizations, is that they're lagging behind in regards to strategic policies, acceptable use policies, what's okay to do within AI models and what's not okay. Because ultimately we're getting to it's a very double-edged sword when you think about AI. It can be used for great things for businesses in a good way, but it can also be used by malicious actors in a very criminal, malicious way. So we have to make sure we find the right benefits and make sure we're not exposing the organization to many risks. So what I find, go ahead if you have a question or you want to comment.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to deep dive a bit on the topic, because with the marketing tools and the marketing capabilities, most of the time you actually need to give access to some data. And I've seen many marketers not thinking about using a same sample data. They just plug in, through their mobile or tablet, they just plug in the information there without realizing what's actually happening.
Absolutely. So one of the major things is that a lot of times now you don't even know that AI is enabled in the products. So that's probably, it's the shadow AI we refer to, is that you've decided to use a technology or a tool integrated into your calendar because it's maybe giving you some type of intelligence about your meetings, how to effectively manage your time. It might be that you're actually joining online, meetings as well, and it might be creating transcripts of those meetings and recordings and giving you really actionable information. But behind the scenes, you don't know what's happening to that data, who has access to it, where it's going. Is it in actually within the regulations? Is there something that you're having in those conversations during those meetings or meetings in your calendar that might be something of a legal perspective? Maybe you're doing acquisitions, maybe it's financial investments. All of those have a compliance and regulatory side of things. And without understanding how those AI models are using the data, where they're storing them, how it's been processed, how it's being collected, it's a really massive data risk and data regulatory issue when you start exposing data to those types of models. So it's really important, just like we went through the whole EU GDPR, maybe 8 years ago, and the whole kind of run and ramp cycle in order to get compliant with GDPR. We should take a very similar approach when you're thinking about how your data is going to be used by AI models to make sure that you're maintaining compliance, because AI is a regulatory nightmare. My big concern is that many countries are trying to have that balance between innovation, adoption, but also some type of control or a best practice approach. I think a best practice approach is not sufficient because ultimately, when you start, putting your data in, there's no going back. There's no removing it. It's out there, and that becomes a massive challenge. So for me, it's really important that organizations, start at the top. You need to have a really strategic AI acceptable use policy for the business. And then you need to go through from a data risk perspective into what data is okay to use in those models and what data is strictly forbidden. Things like PI data, PII, personal identifiable information, health information, financial information, credentials and proprietary code, legal documents. All of those things you want to make sure that do have some type of very strong regulatory demand from that data, that you try to restrict where possible, not to use it in the models, unless you have a very tight control into the model itself, meaning that you've got private instances, that you have the right subscription model for the type of data that you're actually using, that might be also a local data model GPT location. So you actually full control, full access rights, and understanding that you're actually able to meet the regulatory needs of that data assets themselves. So it's really important to make sure you have clarity and transparency and a good solid inventory of what AI models are being used, and also making sure you take a data risk approach when you're trying to decide what type of data is going to be used by those models.
Yeah, I feel like it's a bit overwhelming because as a marketer, you don't know all the regulations. You don't even realize what LLM is behind that nice, image. So I have so many questions on this. How can marketers, be mindful of what they are doing? And most probably, many companies probably, they don't have yet an AI proper department, like I don't think there's enough enablement in the market about what AI means and the types of AIs and everything you mentioned. So in your example, to get a bit more practical, if I download, I find a tool in the Apple store and I download something for voice transcript, voice recording, it looks like a simple plugin that I just add on my phone. Can we explain in like we would explain to a 5 years old, what does it mean? Where does it go? What does it do? Because it seems very innocent. When you look at it, okay, it's going to record my meetings. It's going to put this and give me some nice files. Yeah.
That's a data risk nightmare. I mean, there's one thing which is the central data repositories and giving access to those. But there's also then you think about the edge devices in your use case scenario that you mentioned. When you think about edge devices, those devices have access to certain data repositories as well. You might have on your device access to a SharePoint location, a Google Drive. You might have access to the local photos on this device itself, all your calendar meetings, your emails. There's lots of information that is held in that device. Now, when you install a simple app, then you have the question about what type of controls and access are you giving that app? Are you giving it full access to the device? Or are you able to control and limit what it has access to? So it's really important to read the EULA, the user license agreement, which unfortunately I do that. I do that in order to make sure that I understand what I'm, putting myself into from a user acceptance license agreement. But many people don't read it, and you have to go into the details about understanding. And this is why when you're giving an app access to your device, a simple thing like translation or to do real live voice translations, all of that might have access to a large amount of data on your device. And then the question is what type of data is it collecting? And then where's it been stored? Who has access to it? Is it public or private? After there's a lot of cases, some organizations might be able to resell that data to other businesses.
Wow.
And that's where you get into a lot of the third-party license agreements as well. So you don't know where that data is going to go by simply just installing that little bit of like a small app in your device. And that's why it's so important to read the privacy policy. It's so important to read the end user license agreement. It's so important to read the developer's usage of the data and what type of data it has access to. And then always take a principal least privilege, which means is that, if you don't want it to have access to everything, make sure you have control and disable all of those things. Because usually many people hit the defaults, just say, yeah, accept all. I just want it to work. I want it to work without having any challenges, because if you disable things, sometimes it may not function as you expected. So a lot of people just say, accept all, have access to everything, yes. But the risk that that simple action exposes is massive. What you're doing is you're taking that little app for simply voice translation or language translation or transcriptions, and you're giving it access to your entire life. Because in many cases, our phones are an extension of our digital selves. It is your digital life. It has everything from your health information, your location information, who you interact with, who you call, what pictures you take, what meetings you go to, everything. That is literally, it's become, I always say that the device itself has almost become like our digital DNA, and anyone who gets access to that can know a lot about you, sometimes even more than you know, by just looking at the metadata from the device itself.
Yeah, that's incredible insight. So just to get a bit paranoid now, if with the scenario we were running through, could it be possible through an app for someone's voice that downloaded the app without reading all the implications to have their voice cloned or used in other apps where they are selling voices with certain accents in certain languages? Would that be a possible malicious, let's say, scenario without the user realizing that he's borrowing his voice?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we've seen it in cases where people's voices, and they may have done a translation in the past, but they didn't read the actually legal or the acceptable use or future use of their voice. And that could be something, yeah, you could find out that by using that app, is that what you're doing is unknowingly given permission to use your voice, and not just your voice, but also your personality, your perception of things. Yeah, so you're kind of almost, as I mentioned, what you're giving access to is your digital DNA, and they can simply use that for future advertisements, cloning, creating music, creating translations, advertisements, and you might all of a sudden find yourself sitting at a train station and hear your voice over the microphone, and you're not getting paid for it because you accepted a free product, and by entering into that free product user license agreement, you give them permission to use your voice.
So you sold your voice without even knowing you're selling it. You gave your voice away for free, basically. Oh my God, that's
in exchange
for
free
for the free app. For the
Yes.
free app. Okay, I'll be more careful. And
That's why for me, it's a pain, even because my kids are using tons of apps all the time. And I have them. I've actually got them to the point where that I will not accept an app unless they read through the user license agreement, the privacy policy, and that they have an understanding of it. Even take that privacy policy and put it through an AI model and try to understand, use AI for your benefits and understanding. You can take that privacy policy, put it through a GPT and say, hey, what am I giving up? And by accepting to this license agreement, and it will summarize it for you. So, yes, those are very legal speak license agreements, but take it and put it through a GPT and just say, summarize it. What am I giving up? And it will tell you in a very simple. So use AI to help you. AI, it will replace a lot of traditional jobs, but it will also create new jobs as well. And we have to think about how we use AI. AI is it's almost like a superpower. It's something that helps us go faster, move faster, make decisions faster, understand data faster. I always say one best term I heard, that it's almost like the mushroom in Super Mario Kart. So if you ever play retro games and you're playing
Yeah,
Super
yeah, of
Mario
course.
Kart
I'm
and you get
big
the
fan.
mushroom and it
It's
makes
Saint
you go
Princess.
faster. So that mushroom makes you bigger, stronger, faster. And that's what AI does. AI is that, it's an accelerant. And we have to understand about how can we use it. I will say that with accountability and responsibility. And therefore we have to understand, we have to have clarity and explainability. And this is something that, so use AI to help you in these scenarios. Even say, I'm installing this app. What's the license agreement? What's the privacy policy? What am I signing up for? And should I do it? Is this something, what am I exchanging in regards to the service? And yeah, it will help you make decisions faster. I wish that as part of this, installing apps, that you would simply just say, take all of the documentation information about this app and in simple terms, explain it to me. What am I giving up? And having that integration would be a massive, the software bill of materials we talk a lot about. What's all the components? What's the risks of this app? Let's use AI to help us make that decision better and with more clear understanding and expectations.
And faster, because usually those terms and conditions are quite lengthy. It happened to me before. I'm not going to lie. It happened to me before to say, accept all, as we say in my home country, Romania, sign like the mayor without reading anything, just sign, sign, sign.
Yes.
And then I would
You're
see a
not,
pop-up.
yeah. It's like signing like autographs.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
not superstars. Our signatures, when we put it on a piece of paper, could mean something.
Yeah,
It's
that's another
like
occasion.
holding the piece of paper and getting a superstar's autograph, and then you unfold it, and they signed an agreement for you. So,
It was signed in blood. You gave your life away.
so
Yeah, that it's a lot to think about. Also, I wanted to get your professional opinion about another hot topic. There are lots of apps that offer now vibe coding. I've started testing myself as well. I don't feel comfortable on signing the agreement. So, you might be building an app just to test the feature of some application. What should you be aware of, especially if you're building something for marketing where you need to put some data, you need to install something. You can't just play with it in a space controlled.
the important part is when you're doing any type of acceptance testing or just exploratory side of things, always do it in the sandbox. I use multiple mobile phones when I'm testing new apps to make sure that is it something that I understand. So I keep it away from. I've got my burner kind of phone, which is where I test things on, because the data in there is just rubbish data. So I'm not testing against my digital real life information until I understand it better. And the same with any type of marketing tools out there. You should always test and put it in UAT environments, which is user acceptance tests, and never have it with real data. Always have some type of dummy kind of unreal data set, which is close to being the real data, not necessarily, but as accurate as you can possibly get it. So you have an understanding of expectations and how it works. So I think it's really important to make sure that you never expose it immediately to real live data that could be potentially harmful. You could get into things like GDPR compliance issues. You could get into PCI compliance issues, SOC compliance, HIPAA, if it was health data. Especially in HR department or marketing, who might be collecting information about employees or about age and types of maybe kind of work records. Then you want to make sure that you're handling that with the regulatory side of things in mind. So always use an acceptance test environment with test data, never real life.
That's a great advice. Thank you, Joe. When it comes to training, AI training for employees, especially in medium-sized, larger organizations, do you have any tips and tricks? How can the users, the business user, be educated in a faster way?
So one of the great things is AI tools are a accelerant in regards to training by itself. It's amazing what the tools can do to help you become more efficient, more effective at training. So what you can do is that, I think it's really important, first of all, have the right structure and organization. I think organizations will have to evolve with AI in mind. It means that you might have to have somebody who is a chief data officer or digital officer who AI should fall under in regards to, because it's a data risk and a data usage. So therefore, it should fall under their responsibility. But I think it's really important that I need to have some type of AI kind of department or oversight to make sure as tools are deployed and used, that there's also the associated training that gets applied to it as well. Because ultimately, I will say, just going back to my metaphor about Super Mario Kart, when you get the mushroom, it doesn't make you a better driver. It just makes you go faster. And if you're a bad driver going fast, you're going to have lots of mistakes and accidents. You may not even get any further. You may only get around a corner and all of a sudden you're done. So it's really important is that AI doesn't make employees better or more efficient or more effective. It just makes them move faster. But faster doesn't always mean that they're doing things that the job and the company needs. So it's really important to make sure as you're going through an AI training is that you have them understanding about how to use it to getting value out of the solutions, how to use it, how do you make sure we have to go through prompt training to understand about how to ask the right questions. I will say that it's some, in order to get the best decisions, you have to know what's the right questions to ask. Does it have access to the data that will support the questions to get you the right, let's say, accuracy level of the answer as well? If that data model doesn't have the right data, you're going to basically get hallucinations and you're going to get rubbish out. There's lots of cases. I was chatting with a friend of mine last week. We were talking about using AI in cybersecurity and creating code. And the AI model was actually going and saying, yeah, I've created this code for you. It's ready to go. But ultimately, when he looked and went into the details about the code itself, it actually said to be done. It didn't write it. It just said, I will do this in a future date. And he's going, what? What you said you did it. And it's like, no, I put it as to be done in the future. And you're like, okay, so it's really important to understand about how to create the right prompts and the right questions. And what I find is even when I'm getting into, I use it for a lot of code conversions. So converting old legacy code from C and from batch command line jobs into things like Python and Go. As I'm doing the conversions, I have to be so explicit into very, very detailed to the as clear as I can to what I want and expect. A lot of cases, if I just ask it to convert the code, all of a sudden it takes a 10-line code, and now it writes like 1,000 lines. I'm going, how can you take something that was 10 lines in one programming language, and now I've got thousands of lines? How does that work? Because it's then going through all these potential errors and code handling and exceptions, and I'm like, I don't want that. I want it simple. I created this simple in the first place. I want it simple again. So it's really important to understand, and that's why even if you're using developers who's going to create code out of these models, is that they have to be trained in how to do it right, and it really means how to do prompt training in order to make sure that you're not getting a lot of rubbish and garbage and creating future workloads for employees that is unnecessary.
Yeah, that's great advice. And also, I think what I liked from your answer is also to underline it. It's also the fact that knowing how to program, understanding C++, understanding Python, and all of that, it's actually a skill. I've heard some conversations online that AI is going to replace developers and all of that. So I think it's important to highlight that so people understand that this is not replacing. I think it's even more important that you know and you handle well the programming part to actually check what AI is doing and how it's hallucinating.
Imagine if I didn't understand what the code was doing. Anyone
Yeah.
else would just say, do this, write this piece of code for me. I want it to do this. And they get 1,000 lines back and they're like, oh, okay, it's wrote the code for me, and they go and start using it. Imagine that, that 1,000 lines of code, imagine it could have been done in 10 with a much more simple approach by somebody who understands and actually, understands what they really need is in the end. That the supportability and maintenance of 10 lines of code versus 1,000 lines is huge. Imagine something breaks and somebody has to go and start reviewing and understanding what actually broke. That becomes a major challenge. So it's important to make sure that we're not creating unnecessary work for the future, and that we're doing it with efficiencies and effectiveness as possible. So yes, uh, it should be a developer who's been trained, who's using AI to help a system create code. If you take an untrained person who doesn't know how to code, they're going to create unnecessary workloads in the future, and processing computational power and energy costs to run it and compile 1,000-line code. That is not, is it, it might be doing the task that that person expected, but it's doing it in such a way that is highly costly for the future.
Excellent. That's great advice. Yeah, I see many people doing apps now with the vibe coding, and they look nice. But then when you look at the other part of the code, I'm not sure that that's the right approach.
I like augmented. I like it when it augments and teaches me that, oh, I made a mistake here, or that it's, making predictions and pointing me in the right place. I like that. I like when I'm using Codium or VS Code and it's kind of making suggestions. So I like it when it's augmented in helping me achieve what I needed to do, not trying to do it for me. And then I had to go. I think it's great at creating templates for me. It creates a template, and then I had to go and rewrite and modify that template quite a bit in order to get it fully functional. But it's taking a large amount of my wasted time doing that and creating me a good baseline to start with. I think that's where it's good at. It reduces, it creates the templates in such a way that I can reuse it very effectively and very efficiently.
Yeah, what do you think about those website builders with AI, where you basically give a prompt, they create a website for you? But as a marketer, when it comes to deployment, like, what do I do now? What's happening?
You have to make sure, one thing is that if we are skipping a lot of steps in order to get content and infrastructure and resources done for us, is we can't skip the quality control side of things. So and that part becomes heavily let's say you need to invest more in that area if we start skipping the steps in the creation side, to the point where you had to go through and you had to do proper quality control testing before you move something like that into production. So it means that you definitely want to make sure that when you're getting into the CI, DevSecOps and DevOps pipelines, that you want to make sure that the quality is being properly conducted, and that you're going through and making sure that it's doing exactly what it's expected and what you think it's going to be doing. So quality assurance is a highly important investment as part of this process.
Excellent. That's great advice. Do you have any special advice for B2B marketing or non-marketing professionals when it comes to AI tools? Is there any thing you would like them to know, if you could give them just one piece of advice, really?
Read the license agreement. Yeah, read the license agreement, because that's ultimately you have to understand what you're giving up in regards to exchange for it. People are not creating these products just for the fun of it. They're creating it because they want to monetize it. And it means that if you're getting something for free, also take a look at the paid versions and see what the paid versions are either adding or removing. And what I mean removing is they might be removing certain rights around their usage of the data. So it's really important to look at, one is what the paid models look like and what they include and don't include, and also make sure you read the license agreement, because nothing today is for free. And you might be giving up quite a lot by accepting those.
That's great piece of advice. Thank you, Joe. What about for the CEO level people? What advice would you give those?
For the CEO, I think it's really important that they make sure that they evolve the organizational structure to facilitate AI. What's happening right now is that AI has been kind of moved into each department in its own way and becoming very siloed and very fragmented. So they're having less transparency, less visibility on the risk side of things, and understanding about how it's impacting compliance. So it's really important to make sure that as this is happening is that they try to properly structure the organization in order to facilitate how AI will benefit the organization. Maybe it needs to fall under, for example, the legal department, because it ultimately becomes a compliance regulatory requirement. So maybe legal are the team that it starts off with. But that, in many organizations, that becomes a bottleneck and a really slow kind of, in order to say, if you want to innovate, you want to move fast, moving it to legal, it's not fast and it's not innovation. So it's really important to make sure that you do it, to still allow the innovation efficiency that the business and organizations needs. So probably likely into the chief data, chief digital officer in organizations, but very closely tied to the regulatory side of things as well. So I think organizations will need to evolve in order to get the most value, because if you don't, then you're going to fall way behind, and other organizations are going to take over, and that could, for many businesses, that could be the end of the business if they don't innovate, if they don't move fast, with accuracy as well and accountability. It might slow the business down to a point where they become, less competitive in the market.
Yeah, that's great piece of advice. I think digital transformation is at the next level with the whole AI layer. Yeah, it needs to be integrated in the whole business model, actually. I've seen lots of jobs appearing in the last couple of years, with lots of AI-centric job roles. Do you have an opinion or even a prediction on where the workforce, like the future of work, is going to head towards in the next 5 to 10 years, let's say?
Yeah, and data analysts and data risk. That's ultimately where majority of people is going to be. They're going to be analyzing how to monetize and get value out of data. So data engineers, data analysts, and then there's also going to be the data risk side of things. Is that how do we make sure that we don't expose it to too much, that it's just enough to do the job that needs to be done. So in the definitely data engineers, both in an analyst and a risk perspective, there's going to be jobs where many organizations will need to invest into. And then also into data classification is also an important area, is to understand about how data, when you take two pieces of data and you put them together, how does it change? How does it change the value, the tangible asset itself? So this is another area into understanding. So data classification will become a major area for investment in the future. So it's really, data engineers and architects around data. That's ultimately where it's going to be the value. Technology changes, so to pinpoint in specific technologies, I think that we would just have to learn and continue learning in that side of things. Data at the core, data is one of the most valuable assets that we have, and the more and better we understand it, the more we use it with the right intentions, I think that can make a big, massive value for organizations and employees.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Do you want us to cover any other topics?
I think it's important as well as to understand, as we're looking through about the usage of AI, that it's also we have to be careful about the abuse of AI as well, is allowing it access to too much information. So it's really important to make sure that as you're going through and you're using large language models and you're using machine learning and you're using training, that you make sure you do it with minimal data as possible. Less can be much better, because then it allows you to control quality and accuracy. When you start opening it up to things like the public internet, that's not accurate. More doesn't mean better. You'll get very, very poor decision models if you add too much information. So focus on accuracy, focus on quality, and your model will be much better.
Yeah, I think many marketers are trying to learn AI, but because they're actually lacking the basics, the basic understanding of what programming means, how a program is being built, and all of that, they are kind of struggling and they are going in different directions. And it feels like they're just scratching the surface. I've started doing training with some of the marketing teams I work with, and I realized they need an assessment. They need to understand where they are. And many of them, they don't have any technical background, even if they work in tech for years. So it's really hard to have that conversation at the right level, would you recommend them to start from zero or maybe partner up with their technical security teams?
Partnering with the teams as well, because one is you want to get the value, but you also do want to expose security risks as well. So that it's really important to make sure that this is a collaborative effort, and that you don't want teams working on repetitive things in silos. It's definitely, make sure you understand who else in the organization and create liaisons or coordinators between them, so you're not wasting time doing repetitive things in different areas. But definitely work with a security team, because a lot of these also not just come with data risks, but they also come with security risks as well. That could end up having vulnerabilities. A lot of apps out there, could have hidden backdoors and vulnerabilities and software bugs that allows attackers then to take advantage of those and gain access to the data that you might, be using to make critical decisions.
Yeah, so from what you're saying, basically the cybersecurity team now should have a really large organization. There should be a partner for each head of the department that reports into the chief data or chief security operations. So it sounds like you almost need to replicate the org chart as we know it before AI came into place heavily, and have another org for everything apps, data, security.
I think it comes down to if you map it. So one of the ways that I learned in Estonia, and I'm based in Tallinn, Estonia, is that the Estonia government have done it from what I remember going software-defined networks. You do it between software and apps. That was the approach that we talked about. But the Estonian government, they talk about it from services. So what you should be doing is you should be aligning your organization structured around the services that you provide, and then map it back to how the services will have certain data that apply to the services, and certain applications and certain infrastructure and certain teams will be supporting the services. So it's much more effective to do it from a service-defined approach than sometimes your traditional organizational structure. Think about, what is the end product that you're providing, and then map it in such a way that everything is supporting that service and that product, including the security team, including the talent team, the marketing team, that all work aligned together. What's important is that you do have is what we call as cyber ambassadors or mentors within the organization. And those are the ones that basically bridge the gap between security and the teams within the organizational structure, so that there's a collaborative approach and not a siloed approach.
Excellent. That's great advice. I like your view very much. For our listeners, can you share more details? Where can they listen to you, to your podcast, follow your work? And also, I wanted to ask you if it's okay to ask you about Segura, what Segura does. I know this is not, paid episode or anything, but I'm just curious to learn more about your current endeavor.
Absolutely. So for me, to follow my work, I'm typically in most social media platforms. So primarily, I share a lot of my content, whether it being books, blogs, kind of thoughts and ideas, podcasts and videos and webinar sessions onto LinkedIn and X. So those are the two primary platforms where you'll be able to find me. So if you do want to reach out, connect with me, definitely LinkedIn or X is the two places where I'm probably, spending the most time in my networking and social sphere. When it comes to the podcast as well, so I've got the Security by Default podcast, and that podcast is on all streaming platforms, whether it being Spotify to Apple podcasts and many others. So you can find the Security by Default. Share, subscribe, and go and listen to a lot of the previous episodes. It's really exciting and similar to this format as well, but it focuses purely on the cybersecurity side of things. Then for Segura is a company I've been watching for a number of years. It used to be a company called Senhan Segura, which was known in Portuguese as password security. So Senha was password, Segura is security. And they rebranded recently to just Segura because they're kind of looking to move beyond passwords. And they're a identity security company that helps organizations discover identities and credentials protect them, whether being on-premise or cloud, Active Directory, Azure, Intra ID, and then make sure that you can do privileged access, identity threats and intelligence, integrations into SIEMs and SOARs. So really helping organizations discover and protect the identities and credentials, both on-premise and on the cloud.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. I already listened to some of your episodes, as you know, and I really appreciate them. I feel like I learned so much from you and your guests all the time. So I'm super grateful. I got the opportunity to kindly invite you and you accepted to be here today. Are there any other things you would like for the B2B marketing community, especially the ones working in tech? Is there anything you would like to share with them and, make them think about, even if it's not an advice, maybe, some food for thoughts for them?
I've been asked in the past what's the best advice I can give people, and it's always to make sure that and that when I think about kind of the one that always comes to mind, it goes back to when I was doing a conference. I was speaking in front of teachers, parents, and law enforcement. So I had all these kind of different people in the audience, and people say, "What's the most kind of valuable thing I can share to all of them that would make the biggest difference?" And the conference itself, it was about cyberbullying. And when I think about the time, I was thinking, okay, never be afraid to ask for help. And I think that's the big thing is that, if you are not sure or you have questions or you want to not waste your time doing something over and over again because somebody else might have the answer for you, don't be afraid to ask for help. Reach out to those who can help you find the answer much faster, more efficient, more effective, because there's many people out there thinking the same thing or have already started working in some of the problems that you're searching for the answers for. So never be afraid to ask for help. And you can take that in a business perspective. Don't be afraid to ask other people to help you with your business, or you can take it from a educational perspective. If you're learning something, don't try to do it purely alone. Other people will want to join you on that journey and help you. And even just from a personal perspective, don't hold things in. Reach out and speak to people and share. And I think that's the most important thing we can do. It's a life lesson, and something that if we apply that in all aspects of our lives, it will not just make us better, but more healthier, more mental healthier, but also quicker learners.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. And me personally, I'm trying to integrate that in my life. I'm not very good at asking for help. I always wanted to do everything by myself. So it's something I'm practicing. And I know it's not easy to ask for help.
It's not easy. And I think that's a human side of things is we kind of close up and we want to be able to do it all ourselves and not be seen as weak. Asking for help doesn't make you weak. It just makes you social.
Yeah.
And it's really important that kind of we feel free. My problem in the past, and this is a lesson I learned, was I used to be a perfectionist, and that was my problem. And I had a mentor in the past that said, in order for you to accelerate in your life and career, you need to be more willing to share. And that was the kind of idea came from that, was don't be afraid to ask for help, because that is in a way of sharing it in itself.
Yeah, we had in the first episode the amazing Allegra Patrizzi here, and she has this concept with care, dare, share, which really pushed me personally. It was like clicking a button. It really pushed me after the conversation with her, to start launching my services, even if they are not perfect. So I might need to talk with your coach as well. I might suffer a bit of perfectionism myself. But all the great tech leaders, they are all saying to launch before you're ready. I think there are many people, especially high performance, that they struggle with perfectionism, and you end up maybe even doubting yourself. And in reality, you just have to do it. And most likely, if you ask for help, which I've been practicing in the last couple of weeks, nobody said no. So it was really enlightening in a way for me to realize that I'm just, reaching out to people. Would you like to do the podcast? It's a bit outside my comfort zone to put myself out there. I mean, as you know, I organized events, activities, but I was behind the scenes, so it's not very easy for me. And thank you so much for also pushing me to do this episode as not a scripted episode, and we could have a normal, regular conversation. And that's thanks to you, Joe. So it's going to improve the quality of my future podcast episodes. So I want to publicly thank you for that as well. And thank you for all the knowledge sharing and for all your kindness and really life lessons. A pleasure to have you here. And I hope we will see each other again.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what it's all about. And this is what, and many thanks for inviting me on your podcast. And I think it's a great opportunity for people to listen to different people and share. And the free flow and interactive makes it much more engaging. So many thanks for having me here.
Thank you. I actually enjoyed it more like this. I feel more relaxed. It was, quite casual. I would be able to focus more on adding some animations, especially with Mario. That bit with Mario, I really
the Super Mario Kart.
Super Mario. I'm a bit of a Super Mario fan myself. So, thank you so much, Joe. And to our listeners, please share the episode with other leaders. Subscribe. You know what you have to do. I will insert all the links below, whichever platform you're watching. And until next time, make sure to be safe, whatever apps you're downloading or installing on your devices. Thank you.